Did you know that you can easily access files, emails, and other user data in your web apps using web components and API of Microsoft Graph?
You want to learn how to use this wealth of data in Microsoft Graph to build apps that interact with millions of users?
And yes, I mean the hundreds of millions of people who use Microsoft 365 every single day.
And you can build apps for them.
It's pretty cool, and we're going to tell you all about it, what you can do with it, how to get started with it in a live, by developers, for developers streaming event.
We're inviting you to join us on April 14th in your time zone to learn how to build apps with Graph together.
Microsoft Graph is the invaluable connective framework that brings all of the inherent richness and security of the Microsoft 365 Cloud Platform to your own apps and your own bots.
So whether you're a professional developer,
Student, or startup,
Join us live for some fun conversation and code.
And let's learn how to build apps
With Graph
together.
I'll see you there.
All right, and welcome back to Learn Together, Developing Apps with Microsoft Graph. I'm Christina Warren, Senior Cloud Advocate here at Microsoft, and we were so excited to have all of you joining us so that we can learn more about building stuff with Microsoft Graph. And I'm joined right now by some really great people who are going to help us kind of get things started before we go into our first session. I'm joined by Mr. Todd Anglin, who is a Principal PM on the M365 advocacy team. I'm also joined by Yina Arenas, who is a partner PM over on the Graph team, as well as Kristen Womack. Welcome, all of you. How are you all doing?
Good morning, Christina.
Hello.
Awesome. So if everybody wants to maybe just give like a quick introduction and tell us a little bit about yourselves, and then we'll ask some questions and talk a little bit about what we're all going to see today. We'll start with you, Yina.
Sure. So first of all, thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much everyone who is joining us remotely on this fun learning event. What an awesome way to spend time learning about Microsoft Graph. And as Christina mentioned, my name is Yina. I've been in the Microsoft Graph team since it was an idea, and having fun enabling developers across the world to integrate with Microsoft 365 services.
Awesome. And Kristen?
Hi. Thank you so much for having me. I'm Kristen, and I'm actually new to Graph, and this has been exciting because I've been learning so much about Graph, and I'm excited to talk about that with you today. I'm excited that you're here, and yeah.
Fantastic. And Todd, anything you want to say before we start talking about all this stuff?
No, I mean, I'm excited to be here, and I really appreciate Yina. Kristen, thanks for joining us this morning. I think we've got a lot to cover today, the next 2 hours, to give developers that introduction to Microsoft Graph, some of the cool things you can do with it. And so, Christina, if you don't mind, I'm just going to throw the first question to Yina here.
Absolutely.
And ask Yina, what is Microsoft Graph? For developers who've never heard of this, what is it, and why should they care about it?
So I want you to think for a second about all of the data that our customers have across all of the different services that we have that power productivity. OneDrive, Outlook, SharePoint, Exchange, Azure Active Directory, Intune, all of these services powering consumer, commercial, education, and all of the data that is generated by users, customers that are using these services every single day, and the relationships between this data. The users, the groups, the organizations, the files, the meetings, the emails, all of this information together, that's the Microsoft Graph. And for developers, the ability to access all of this information to power your applications through simple interfaces, like an HTTP-based API.
Fantastic. And let me just ask a real quick follow-up, because this might be a silly question, but just to be clear, like this is not to be confused with something like GraphQL, right? Like this is a different type of technology.
Right. Well, GraphQL is a query language, and Microsoft Graph in its HTTP-based API uses a similar pattern to OData, which provides the flexibility to ask and do those queries, do selection, filtering, do ordering by and all of the queries, do batch requests. So it's a slightly different syntax, and that provides access to all of the data that I was mentioning before.
Very cool.
Right. Yeah. Now, Kristen, I mean, this is a lot of data, obviously, for developers to work with, but who is this really for? Is this for .NET developers, JavaScript developers? Who can work with Microsoft Graph?
really any developer. We have a variety of tools in all programming languages. My team specifically works on developer experience. So that means that we're working on the SDKs and the code samples across many different languages. So Java, Node, Python, JavaScript, C#, Objective-C. We have PowerShell, Go. So you can use code samples and SDKs to get started. We also have tutorials and learning paths that go through many different scenarios that you might be programming in across the languages that you're working with. And then we also have tooling. So we make it accessible even if you are not using a language. Let's say you just want to play around with the API. So you can go to Graph Explorer and we have a sandbox, and it's an API client that's similar to if you are familiar with Postman or Insomnia. So you can get started playing around and then go from there. We also have Graph Toolkit. And so that's a component-based tool where you can take web components that are common, like a login button, or you can think of a people card, and you can play around with what that looks like on the front end using the data from Graph API.
Very cool. So these are all technologies as a developer I kind of already know about. I know about HTTP REST API calls. I know about web components. So what I'm hearing is that if I know these basic things, I kind of know what I need to know to get started with Graph. Is that right?
Yeah,
that's right.
So,
very cool.
I will say there's a little bit on top of that, which is all of the data that is in Microsoft Graph is under high levels of security and privacy because it's data from our customers. Yeah. So in addition to just making an HTTP request, you need to know how to do an auth 2.0 flow in order to get an access token to be able to call the API.
Of course, security is number one.
Absolutely. So Kristen, I want to ask you, since you are newer to Graph, what is the coolest thing that you've seen built using Microsoft Graph?
Well, honestly, there's a lot of really exciting bigger customers and partners. But what's really interesting to me is it kind of takes me back to the early days of playing around with the Internet of Things and APIs, and that there's really actually creative small things that you can do. This doesn't have to be a big, huge partnership to get started with Graph. You can even have simple things like, if my build passes all of its tests, turn this light green on my desk. Or Yina demoed a strip of color on her door, where she can let her family know if she's on a meeting. So for example, you can set your status on Teams, if it's set to busy, that the light can be red on the outside of your door. So for me, it kind of is like bringing it back to the fundamentals of being excited to just explore and play around. And I think from there, that's where you start to build on the ideas that you can bring to life with Microsoft Graph.
I love that. And I hope that you have that status light thing up on GitHub somewhere, because I would love to implement that for my own office. That would be great.
It is actually on GitHub. It is a project that Isaac, one of our peers, did, and it actually got a lot of pickup after last build. It was last year at Build when we did this.
So you've been around a long time. You've seen Graph from the beginning. Any other cool examples of things you've seen done over that time with Graph?
Oh, absolutely. Like Kristen was mentioning, we see partners, large organizations, small organizations, professional developers, citizen developers, data scientists doing great things with Microsoft Graph. I'll mention a couple. The first one is from a company called Nulia. They are actually building a solution that is called Nulia Works, which is digital enablement platform that allows users to use their digital skills to realize their potential. So what it does, it provides assessments that demonstrate their knowledge for Microsoft 365, like bumping up the usage of the services for customers that buy the licenses. And then the platform encourages to demonstrate their skills and verifies all of their skills using Microsoft Graph requests. So it's actually pretty cool. The second one is an open source project from the community, which is targeting providing a solution for the DevOps. So basically what it does is it uses the Microsoft Graph PowerShell SDK, and it allows you to automate configuration of provisioning and all of the different things that admins and DevOps need to do to manage their organization. And it does it in a very simple way. It's basically like what ARM templates are to Azure, and it provides a way to template management and provisioning of the organization.
Very cool. Thanks for those examples. And for those who don't know, ARM, Azure Resource Manager, I think is the ARM acronym.
Yes.
Another great technology there. You'll eventually learn if you don't know it now. So we've got about 30 seconds here. We have to throw it out to the rest of the day, the 2 hours of actually learning all about Graph. So Christina, I think we both want to know from Yina and Kristen, if developers don't remember anything but one thing today over the next 2 hours, what is it that you want them to take out of today's event?
One thing, graph.microsoft.com. That's all you need to know.
Graph.microsoft.com. I love it. I love it.
Chris, I don't know if we can beat that. Is that the thing that we should all take away from this?
That's what we should all take away from this. Yes. Graph.microsoft.com.
Excellent.
Fantastic. Well, thank you. Thank all three of you for joining us to kind of kick things off. And as Todd mentioned, we're now going to get into some content. If you're excited to be building things with Graph, I know that I am. We're now going to kick things off over to Aisha and Dan, who are going to be talking to us about, a developer's guide to Microsoft Graph. Check it out.
Thank you.
Hello everyone, welcome to Developer's Guide to Microsoft Graph. My name is Aisha Bush and I'm a cloud advocate at Microsoft. Today, my colleague Dan is joining me for this presentation. Hi Dan, how are you doing?
Hey Aisha, I'm doing great. I'm excited to be here with you and welcome everyone. The goal of this presentation Aisha and I are going to do with you today is to really address the what, the why, and the how of Microsoft Graph. So what we're going to do to answer those questions is start off with the what. And Aisha and I are going to put on our best acting hats. We are not professional actors, as you will shortly see, but it'll be a great opportunity to talk through a scenario and help you better understand where you would use Microsoft Graph. So with that, Aisha is going to play the role of a developer consultant. She's going to jump on a call with me. I'm going to be a manager over a dev team, and we're interested in what Microsoft Graph can do. So let's kick off our call. So Aisha, thanks so much for joining me. We are really interested in hearing more about what you have to tell us about Microsoft Graph.
Awesome. Thanks for inviting me in this meeting, Dan. How are you doing? Long time no see.
We're doing great.
Yeah, so Dan, tell me, how can I help you with Graph?
Well, probably in a lot of ways, we kind of have a mess. We're realizing that we just have all this data all over the place and we're not really leveraging it at all in our apps, but we want to be.
I know, right? Every day we join the meetings, read emails, chat with our colleagues on Teams, and all these actions are actually creating data in Microsoft 365 Cloud. As you know, with Microsoft Graph, we can access to this data.
Yeah, and I read up on it a little bit, and it sounds like we're kind of heading down the right direction, but yeah, tell me a little bit more about, I think Graph and I think GraphDB or GraphQL or something like that, but tell me a little bit more about what it does specifically.
Yeah, so actually that's a great thing that you mentioned. Microsoft Graph is not related with GraphDB or GraphQL. Microsoft Graph is a unified API to access Microsoft 365 data and intelligence. So you can consume Microsoft Graph in your apps to reach out hundreds of data sets in Microsoft 365 Cloud. Basically, you can call Microsoft Graph APIs to gather calendar events, Teams chats, planner tasks in your own applications.
Oh, that sounds excellent. I mean, that's right along the lines of what we needed, I think. So when it comes to why then, I don't know. Do you want to hear a little more info on that, I guess?
Yeah, so tell me more specifics about what you're looking for, and I'm happy to help you any way I can.
Okay, so we are building the world's millionth sales application because, there's not enough sales apps out there already. In doing this, though, we're realizing as our sales team, and we also have a support team involved, as they work with the customer, we need them to get some information from people within the organization that have certain skills. A lot of times they need people to jump on calls. We also have them working with tons of files, contracts, everything that our company does. It's just a lot of files. And although they go to office.com and things like that to find them, we think there's probably a better way. We mentioned email and chat already a little bit, and then we go to tons of meetings, or they do, with our customers and have a lot of notes, and kind of what's happening is they'll forget about something that was said previously. So that's the type of thing we want to bring into the app. Is that something we can be helped with Microsoft Graph there?
Exactly, excellent scenario. Of course, all these you're looking for can be accessed using Graph. If you want, I can quickly walk you through how does this work in the technical side.
That'd actually be great.
Awesome. So let's think of Microsoft Graph as a REST API to access data in Microsoft 365. Let's say you would like to build an app that shows users calendar events because it was in your list. You would like to reach out as a data. So I picked that. To do that, you need users' consent because you're trying to reach out users' private data, right? I'm sure in some of the applications you're using in your company, you may already use authentication and authorization process.
We do. We already use Azure Active Directory, actually. So that works out well.
That's awesome. So that's what I'm going to talk about right now. To make this process secure, you can leverage Microsoft Identity Platform, which provides you modern authentication solutions such as Azure Active Directory, and you're already using that. So that you can build apps for your users, they can sign into your app, and they will be authorized to access their own data using Microsoft Graph APIs. That is all. Basically, your users will need to log into your app, and then they will be able to see their own calendar events. And you can build this authentication system in your app using Microsoft Identity Platform.
Excellent. Okay. One of the problems, though, is we're kind of worried about, does my development team have to learn this API and this API and this API? Or you did mention earlier that it's kind of a unified API. So if we want to get to all this data, how's that going to work there?
That's a great question. That's where Graph's power shines. Due to single secured endpoint, you will only need to learn one single endpoint, which is graph.microsoft.com, and you will be able to get all different data sets from Microsoft 365 with one single secured endpoint.
Perfect. Okay. Well, that's really what we need because, maintaining our apps over time is always a challenge. So the simpler we can keep it, the better. Well, that all looks great. So I think we've kind of addressed what it is and why we might want to use it. It sounds like we can tap into all this data and bring it into our apps. So how can we get started then?
Yeah, so 5 quick steps I can share with you. The first one, check out the official documentation of Microsoft Graph. You will find a lot of useful information there. Second of all, there's a great tool called Microsoft Graph Explorer. You can practice Microsoft Graph APIs there and learn more how you can consume those APIs. The third step is just for you to choose right tools and platforms. Microsoft Graph provides huge selection of SDKs and platform supports, so you just need to choose the right one for your own scenario. Fourth step is to configure Azure Active Directory. As we mentioned in the previous step, we need authentication and authorization, which Azure Active Directory provides us. And the last part is just to consume Graph in your own app.
Excellent. Okay. Well, we're looking at, we kind of have a .NET backend, and then we use TypeScript and JavaScript and some other stuff on the front end. So it sounds like as long as we pick the right tools, we could definitely make that work.
Exactly. So if you want, let's just jump into Graph Explorer and discover a little bit together.
That'd be perfect. Okay. So first off, what is Graph Explorer? Is that on the web? Is it free? How do we get to it?
Yeah, so Graph Explorer is a public free tool. Everyone can reach out to Graph Explorer and start practicing Microsoft Graph APIs directly there. If you go to ak.ms/g-explorer, you will be directed to Graph Explorer tool.
Okay, so I'm at that URL and there's quite a bit here. So walk me through what we need to do to get started.
Yeah, so Graph Explorer is actually really easy to use. On the left side, you will see sample queries, and if you click any of those, you will actually run the query automatically.
Okay.
And you will see the response preview.
Excellent. I see my profile. Yeah.
As you see, this data is a sample data. So if you want to play around with your own data, you can sign into Graph Explorer on the left top. You will see the authentication.
Okay, great. Yeah, I know we have a developer tenant. So let me just go ahead and sign in because we didn't prepare for this at all. I'm in.
Awesome. Since you mentioned it then, if any of our developers need developer account, on the top you can see developer program. They can join there and they can get the free developer tenant.
Excellent. Okay. Well, what else can we do? I clicked on my profile and I saw some of that JSON data that comes back, and we're used to working with that, but show me some other things you recommend we look at.
Yeah, so you can go ahead and click my photo. This will bring your photo.
Okay, or someone like me. Okay.
As you see, when we click on my photo, our query has changed automatically. So it is now me photo, and it will bring the photo value.
Gotcha. Nice. Okay, so basically once we learn those APIs, we can start to use them directly, it looks like.
Exactly. Yes, so you can click on my mail.
Okay. Oh, nice.
And this will bring your mails, yes. You can just check out your items in your drive if you have any files.
Yeah, it looks like we don't have any, but this is the developer tenant. Okay, nice. Now, earlier we talked about how mail was a big one, chat, things like that, but also meetings are really important to be able to pull into this app. So I don't see that on the left here, but is that available?
In the sample queries, you see the search box. You can type calendar or events.
Okay.
And you can click events in my calendar.
Okay, yep, I see that. And okay, yeah, see a bunch of data here. Now I noticed in the top, there's what kind of looks like an OData type thing, and I've done some OData, $select, and then some specific properties.
Awesome, yes, exactly. So we can definitely customize the data with OData. You can change which data you'd like to have. We can use filtering. We can also order the data if you would like to. So if you just delete the select part, for example, you can try to add filter.
Oh, nice. Yeah. And I see it actually helps you out. And okay, so $filter equals, what do you want to filter by?
Maybe start date time.
Okay, I see that down here. I'll go ahead and grab a sample piece of data. So we'll say, now is it start dot date time, or how do we get to sub properties?
Start/date time.
Okay, great. And now what I have my date in my clipboard, but what are we looking for here?
Now you can add GE, which means greater and equal.
Okay.
And then just paste the date you grab in the code.
I got it. I got it. All right, nice. Now, is this all ordered, or do I need to sort it as well?
No, this just brings you the data, but if you want to order it, let's say from start date time, you can also put end at the end of your query, and then you can add order by.
Nice. And then we can do that start/date time property if that's what we want.
Exactly.
Okay, perfect. Well, this is great, but so do my devs need to work directly with these URLs, or is there, I'm hoping there's kind of a more code way we can work with those URLs?
Yes, definitely there is. If you just quickly get back to my profile piece, which is the simple and easiest.
Okay, yep.
Yeah, so on the right side of response preview, you will see code snippets.
Yeah,
So in code snippets, we actually have code snippets for this query, specifically my profile in C#, JavaScript, Java, and Objective-C. You can literally grab this code and paste it in your application.
Excellent, excellent. And I noticed a getting started as well while I was just looking around. It looks like it has a bunch of languages and frameworks there too.
Yes, so there's a huge collection of SDKs and platforms supporting Graph. You can just choose whichever is convenient for your project.
Perfect. Well, this is great. I know in an earlier call, you had mentioned you do have some demos you can run from time to time. Do you happen to have anything on Graph that you could show us that's actually in code?
Yes, exactly. I can quickly show you how we can run this code in a real project. So let's jump into the JavaScript app demo. Okay, then let's check out how the Graph APIs work in real applications.
Great.
So Here is a very simple app I prepared earlier. This only has authentication, which I cover under Auth.js. And in the authentication provider, I basically get the user access token and I call Graph client with that user access token, so I'm able to call Graph APIs. And the only thing we do here is just getting user information. As you see, we have ID and display name. If we just quickly run this app without adding anything, npm start, let's check how it looks like for now.
Okay. Well, while that's loading, I like it because it sounds like we don't have to do our own HTTP calls and all that. We can use this Graph client, it sounds like, and actually make the calls to the APIs.
That's right. So that's the beauty of Microsoft Graph. So let me just bring you my window. Now this is how it looks. It's just one button. When I click on it, this will direct me to the login page, and this will ask me a permission to read my basic profile, and I consent this, accept, and then this just asks to read user profile, and there we go.
Okay,
this
nice.
brings me my name, welcome. Now what I would like to do is to enable this show events button. So we will just call Microsoft Graph API for getting calendar events. So what do you think?
Yeah, no, that's perfect because that's exactly one of the things we need in the app. So yeah, if you could show me that, that'd be great.
Yeah, so it is just going to look like this. Let me just grab this and show you how it's going to look for the events. There you go. Exactly the same thing, only the scope changed. It is calendars read. And now we are calling the Graph API.
Okay.
Now, as we did in the Graph Explorer, would you like to try out adding some filter, order, and so on?
Yeah, that'd be great. Real quick question. So walk me through that calendars.read, and then up top, there was a read as well. You consented, I saw. So that is basically, I'm asking for permission, or allowing permission, I should say, to get to that resource. Is that right?
Exactly. So we're asking user to give permission for our app to read the calendar. Once our user give the consent, then the user will see their own calendar information.
Excellent.
So as long as they accept the permission, then they will be able to see their calendar events.
Okay.
The same thing for the user profile.
Great. Thanks for answering that. So yeah, let's, if you want to show me the filtering part, that'd be really nice to see.
Yeah, so as you see, now we only have our API, which is me/events. What we're going to add right now is one piece of filter, as you did actually in the Graph Explorer, and we're just going to add start, date time. You remember this is the part you did, greater and equal, and I'm just going to grab date. So let me just grab one random date. Let's say starting from March 1st, we will get all the events. I'm going to paste it in here. And then let's order by as well, because this is what we tried in the Graph Explorer. And as you know, we are just going to order by start, date, time.
Nice. So basically, you've just converted what we saw in Graph Explorer, but this is more the SDK way to do it, it sounds like.
Exactly. Here, I'm using JavaScript SDK. If your team is using Python, .NET, or any other language, they can just use the related SDK.
That's great. So does it work?
Let's check out. I'm just gonna log in again. This time, when I click show events, it just has to ask me the calendar permissions because it will bring me my calendar events. I will consent this, and there we go.
Nice.
all of our calendar events starting from March 1st.
That's excellent. Yeah, and it looks like everything's all sorted there, and that's exactly what we need because now we can allow our people to, as they work with the customer, also see all these upcoming events, which would be great. Well, that's really, really nice to see. Now, one thing I wanted to ask you about, you mentioned an access token, and I know earlier we talked a little bit about Microsoft Identity, but can you kind of walk me through to wrap up here how that all works?
Exactly. Good question, actually. This is the point we forgot to take a look. So let's quickly check. So in our application, our user asks access token from Microsoft Identity. When the user gets access token from Azure Active Directory, then we can call Microsoft Graph using the access token. Basically, we are using access token as a proof of the user, so we know that that's the right user for us, and then we bring users event. So does it make sense?
Yeah, okay. So when you were consenting and doing all that type of thing with authenticating, once we have all the tokens, I guess, then we're able to call Graph and obviously get the data we need.
Exactly.
Well, great. Well, Aicha, I appreciate your time on this call. So for everyone listening, we'll switch back out. And here's the 5 steps again that Aicha went through a little bit earlier. So you can look at the docs. We recommend the Graph Explorer for sure. And then the tools you use depend. Aicha just showed JavaScript, but obviously that could be whatever is appropriate for your setup at work. And then there is another step. We do need to configure the app in Azure Active Directory. Fortunately, we have some Learn path information on Microsoft Learn where you can go through this process. So you can check that out. And then once you're there, you can use Microsoft Graph. So anything to add to that, Aicha?
No, that's all. You just summarized everything very well. So thanks everyone for watching our session.
Thanks again, everyone. And check out the other sessions coming up.
And welcome back, everybody. I'm Christina Warren. We are here with the Watch Together Learning to Build Apps on Microsoft Graph event. You just watched a fantastic presentation from Dan and Aicha, and now I'm really excited to bring in some of our virtual watch party guests from around the globe. I'm going to bring in right now David Warner, who is joining us with the PNP crew. What's up, David?
Hey, Christina, how are you? Thanks for having us on.
Thanks for being here. Great to see you. Give our viewers at home a little bit of some information. What is the PNP group?
Well, it's Patterns and Practices. It's a global community of enthusiasts and developers, non-developers, makers all over the world that love to collaborate and work together. And we've got on the call today people from Canada, Germany, Sweden, Greece, Serbia, France, Australia, South Africa. So the world is with us today. How cool is that?
That is beyond cool. I have to say, we talk a lot about how much we miss in-person events, and we definitely do. But one of the best things, I think, about some of this stuff is the fact that thanks to technologies like Microsoft Teams, we can all be together with people from around the globe, and it feel like we're actually hanging out. So that's awesome. So David, let me ask you, what excites you as someone who is, a Microsoft MVP who's focused on a lot of the various technologies that we work with, including SharePoint and M365 and Graph? What excites you about Microsoft Graph?
Well, I mean, it's just the connected data. And then you include things like the MGT or Microsoft Graph Toolkit, which are pre-built component implementation or client implementation of amazing and feature-rich interactive solutions at a much faster pace, at a slower cost. And who doesn't get excited about that?
Honestly, yeah.
But since you're part of...
When we were first given an endpoint that we heard was authentication and authorization with the graph is really difficult. So we just built a component that's fully functional behind the scenes, and you just need to drop it somewhere in your HTML page and it just works. So that's when we have the MGT login component. And from there on, we just kind of built more components that follows the same practice, and you can drop them on your HTML page and it just works.
Wow, that's so cool. And I actually love using Microsoft Graph Toolkit components and providers because they're super easy to consume in our apps.
Right, so these are pre-built UI and authentication providers that help you really cuts the development time. And because they're fully functional behind the scenes, you don't really have to write a lot of sort of plumbing code, right? So as soon as you add the proper authentication provider and then you drop, some HTML tags on your page, it cuts the development times by a lot.
Yeah, and also Graph Toolkit has a great selection of supported platforms and the frameworks. That's awesome.
Right. So when we first designed Microsoft Graph Toolkit, we really wanted to work everywhere, which is why we chose to use web components. These are components that built on web standards. So it works with any web frameworks that you can think of, Angular, React. We even have a React wrapper to help you build functional React components. It's called mgt-react. And because they're all web standards, it works for or in all the web browsers.
Okay, so all of these are really cool. And I know that components have pre-built UI that looks and feels like Microsoft Graph experience in default out of the box. What about developers who wants to customize the look and fit their styling with their components?
Right, you can, of course, you can use, templates or CSS custom properties to tweak the look and feel of your components. And we also have theming system that you can theme all your components all together, and including dark theme, because all the devs love dark theme.
Yeah, I'm sure lots of developers will look for a dark theme, so I'm glad we have that in Microsoft Graph Toolkit. Cool. So let's check out what is in Microsoft Graph Toolkit.
We have a lot of components, like I said. Login was the first one, and then we decided to build more to fit different needs. And a good place to explore and play around with these is called Microsoft Graph Toolkit Playground.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's a really nice place to practice about Microsoft Graph Toolkit. Let me quickly walk you through what is Microsoft Graph Toolkit Playground and where you can find it. First of all, if you go to mgt.dev, you will be directed to the playground. And this tool is super easy to use, to be honest. On the left side, you see all the components listed, and on the right side, you have the component itself. If you customize anything here, under the canvas, you will see the changes automatically. For example, we are under Microsoft Graph Toolkit agenda component. Now, if I add or customize anything about the agenda component, it should appear under the canvas. Let's, for example, group events by day. And the moment I add group by day, it will automatically group events under the related day. So that's super cool. So definitely this is a really nice place to practice about Microsoft Graph Toolkit. And this exists for all the components. Let's try to check out other ones like MGT people. Again, this already has some attributes like show max, and whenever you change anything, you will see the changes under the canvas.
Right, so these are good attributes and properties that you can use to tweak, what you want the functionality to look like, or what your UI components to look like. And there's a lot of these attributes and properties available. A good place to explore these attributes and properties, if you're already in the playground, you can click on the Docs tab right next to Canvas, and you will see, the list of attributes that you can use in your HTML tags, or properties that you can use behind the scenes with your JavaScript, or the events that these components fires, and CSS custom properties that's available for you to change styling. Another good place to look at these is if you go to aka.ms/mgt-docs. So that's where the official documentation for Microsoft Graph Toolkit lives. And there's also, a lot of good getting started guides for different platforms. And like we said, with different authentication providers as well.
Yes, so official documentation has a lot of good information. So if you want to have deep dive information, you can check out this doc. And if you want to stick in the playground and explore, practice a little bit, you can also check out docs for each and every component.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's see what else we have in Microsoft Graph Toolkit.
The second part, which is also, in my opinion, some of the most important things in the Graph Toolkit, are the authentication providers and helpers that really just makes it super easy to connect to the graph, right? So out of the box, you have the MSAR provider, which will get the token and call the graph, and then in exchange for information and represent it in your application. But outside of building web apps using MSAR provider, you can also enable your application to be as part of SharePoint platform. For example, if you're building SharePoint web parts, or if you're building Teams platform apps such as Teams tab apps, to convert your web apps into these platforms, you can use our SharePoint authentication provider or Teams auth provider. And on top of all these, recently we just created the Electron provider to help people build cross-platform applications if you wanted to enable some of the native capabilities, such as Windows notifications or changing image in your background, desktop background, so fun things like that. And we also have two more at the bottom. Proxy and custom are kind of enable people who already have your own ways of handling the authentication behind the scenes, and you can just enable proxy provider or build your own custom provider in order to use the Microsoft Graph Toolkit.
Awesome. So with all these components and providers, we actually have a lot of different things we can do.
So there are a lot of different types of apps that you can build with all these authentication providers. And we already kind of touched on, web apps and with any frameworks. And you can also translate your web app into a Microsoft Teams app and SharePoint web part using different auth providers that come out of the box. Electron apps is a kind of a fun one that we're starting to explore, and we would love to hear more from the community on how you're using it, what are the things that you're seeing with it. And the last one is kind of in the middle. We wanted to enable our developers to export their web apps into PWAs in order to utilize things such as the Microsoft Store, that you can utilize the infrastructure in the store in order to distribute your app as well. And we have great tools for, like, Microsoft itself has great tools such as the PW Builder once you're done with your web app.
That's cool. So should we go ahead and try how these components and providers work in a real app?
Yes, after all this talking, let's get to the action.
Let's do it. So I already created a folder and index HTML here in Visual Studio Code. What we're going to do is we will have a very general HTML piece, and we will add first Microsoft Graph Toolkit loader to have all the goodies from MGT providers and the components. Then we will use MSAL provider as one of the providers Beth mentioned earlier. And the last step, we will add our components like login component and all the other fancy components. So let's start. I will click Control Space and add HTML sample. And inside the body, I will just have Microsoft Graph Toolkit loader. I have it in here. Let me just quickly get the script and paste it in here. So this MGT loader will bring me all the providers and components. The second step is just using MSAL provider. And here we need client ID. Beth, would you like to explain why do we need client ID in this case?
Right, so your app is going to need to talk to the Microsoft Identity Platform for getting the token and how to obtain information from there on, right? So it needs like an entry space per se. So the client ID will know which app that's registered with all the configuration that comes with it in Azure portal. So we're probably gonna do that right here in a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. We will do that piece too. Before we just get our client ID from Active Directory, let's add our very popular component, MGT login. So before just creating Azure Active Directory app, let's try to check out what's happening in our app. I'll open my palette and run the live server. Now our app is running localhost 3000. Let's quickly go to localhost 3000 in our browser. Let me grab the browser. There we go. So now we have our sign in button, but it's not working yet. Since we don't have the client ID in our code, it is just showing us a pretty looking UI, but the authentication piece is not working. As Beth mentioned earlier, let's try to go to Azure Active Directory and register an app in Active Directory, get our client ID and see what happens. I will go to portal.azure.com. Let's make this bigger. Now I'll scroll down and choose Azure Active Directory. In Azure Active Directory, I'll find app registrations, and then I will click new registration. There we go. So now this is the place we're going to register a new application, and we will use the client ID. Let me give this a name, MGT Learn Together -demo. And our second step is just defining what kind of accounts can reach out to our app. Pat, would you like to explain what are these? Why do we use these at all?
Right, so there's a couple tenant types. The first one for single tenant, that just means whatever account that you're using to create the app registration, the app can only be installed in the current tenant, which if you see the right upper corner, the admin account belongs to Contoso, so that's why it says Contoso only. Or you can build an app and try to install it and support enterprise scenarios for multi-tenant, which is why the second option says multi-tenant. That means that you can install this app outside of the current tenant as well. And the third one supports not only multi-tenant consumer scenarios, you can also commercial scenarios. You can also support consumer scenarios using personal accounts such as your .live.hotmail.com. And the last one is just if you want to support only a personal account, that's what you select. I think for the demo purpose, let's select the third one, which supports all of because we want to distribute our app to everybody possible.
Yeah, so let's make our app for everyone. Everyone can use our app. For the redirect URI is the last piece for registration of an app. And this redirect URI we're using after the authentication. This is going to be the place our app will continue going. For us, our app is running in localhost 3000, so we wanted to get back localhost 3000 when the authentication piece is done. Then I'm going to type localhost 3000 and we're good to go. I will register this app. Okay, so once the registration is done, we have one last step to complete. Under the authentication, we have to enable implicit grant.
Right, these are tokens that will enable MGT to know, what with the permission scope, what kind of data that it needs to retrieve from Microsoft Graph.
Yeah, so that's why we just check access tokens and ID tokens. I will save this. And we are done. Let's go to overview, grab our client ID, and let's get back to our code. I will paste our client ID here, save it, and then let's check our app. Here, now I will click the sign in button, and there we go. We have a proper authentication. I will choose my account. it's asking me some permissions, like read your profile. That means after the authentication, it will show me my username, email address, my picture, and so on. I will consent this and accept. Wow, there we go. So this is really magic because we literally added 3 lines of HTML code and we have a good looking UI with my picture and username and email address. This is really awesome and pretty useful and pretty practical as well. Let's try to test some of the other components in our HTML. What else we should add, Beth? What do you think?
Let's get the person's agenda items so that I don't have to go out to my email to check my calendar every day.
Okay, let's add MGT agenda. I added MGT agenda. We get back to our app. Oh, now it's asking more permissions like calendars. Okay.
Right. So this is incremental consent. Every time something more from MGT is added to the page, it'll auto-detect what are the scopes that is needed, and then try to get that for you.
This is awesome. With 4 lines of code, we have the sign-in and the authentication. We have the user profile, as well as now we can see user's calendar. This is really awesome. And it looks pretty good as well in the UI perspective.
Exactly.
Wow, that's cool. So let's check out where can learners find out these kind of practical things and where they can learn more about Microsoft Graph Toolkit and maybe build something like this, what we did in demo.
Yes.
So we recently built a great module in Microsoft Learn. If you go to ak.ms/learn-mgt, you will be directed to get started with Microsoft Graph Toolkit. This module will walk you through what is Microsoft Graph Toolkit, and it will also have some practice materials. You will practice and build an application like just we did in the demo piece, and you will discover Microsoft Graph Toolkit a little bit more.
That's awesome. I already started mine.
Yeah, that's cool. So this is all from us. Thank you everyone for joining our session. I hope you enjoy the rest of the sessions as well. So back to the studio.
Welcome back. All right, that was fantastic stuff from Aisha and Beth. I hope that you're all enjoying our Learn Together Build Apps with Microsoft Graph session, and we'd love to hear your feedback online. You could use the hashtag Learn Together on Twitter. Let us know your thoughts. We really, really appreciate it. We hope that you're having fun. I know I'm learning a ton. I have to be honest, I haven't known a lot about Microsoft Graph, even though I've been hearing about it for years. And this has been a really good primer for me as a developer because I'm really seeing the benefits of all the stuff that you can do with Graph and all the capabilities that the tooling has to offer. And speaking of that, I kind of want to point out, if you're like me, if you're somebody who's just getting into Microsoft Graph, but honestly, if you've already been doing this for a while, this is valid for you as well. We have a really fantastic challenge, and we're calling this the Microsoft Graph Learn Challenge. And it is available at the website aka.ms/challenge-graph. That's aka.ms/challenge-graph. And what this is this is a challenge that will be kicking off actually in about like 90 minutes. And when you go to this challenge, you will take certain learning path sessions from Microsoft Learn associated with Microsoft Graph, complete those sessions, and we will randomly be selecting 20 challenge finishers to get $100 gift cards, right? So you'll get, there's a chance to win $100, which is awesome. So not only is it free, you can go to aka.ms/challenge-graph to get all the details. You can check out the content on Microsoft Learn, go through the learning path content, and have a chance to win $100. I like it. I'm not eligible to win, by the way, but I'm going to take the challenge anyway. I'm not eligible to win, but I'm still going to take the challenge anyway. And I do want to point out too, we've been pointing this out in some of the other sessions that we've seen. If you are wanting to get more resources about where to go to learn more, about Microsoft Graph now that you're seeing some of the cool things that you can do and how easy it is to build apps and integrate Graph into your other experiences, Microsoft Learn is the place where you want to go to do that. So that's at docs.microsoft.com/learn, or as I said, you can go to the challenge, aka.ms/challenge/graph. And that is great stuff. Also want to kind of give a shout out. We have a YouTube channel, youtube.com/Microsoft365 developer. And this is, we're still kind of starting it up, but we're going to be doing a lot more content over the coming weeks and months, especially related to Microsoft Graph, but also all things Microsoft 365. So if you're looking for more content, kind of like the sessions that you're seeing today, but maybe even shorter tips or live streams and other stuff just associated with developing on Microsoft 365, youtube.com/Microsoft365 developer is a great place to go, and there's great content there. But also just want to give the shout out once again, be sure to take our challenge, your chance to win $100, aka.ms/challenge-graph. And this is great stuff. So now, without further ado, we're going to go into our next session, which is all about staying on top of your team's work with Microsoft Graph, part 1.
So far you have seen how we can use Microsoft Graph to get Microsoft 365 data. Now let's see it in action. We're going to build a JavaScript application to keep your finger on the pulse on what's happening around you. So let's begin. So today we're going to see how you can build apps with Graph. And we have an example of an app that can show you some details about who you're working with. If you're new in a company, you probably want to know more about your colleagues. You want to know about how your day looks like. So we're going to jump in from one functionality to another to show you how we can achieve that. So first thing first, maybe we would want to know our colleagues first, because that's what we're excited to see who we are working with and who they are, where they're from. Now, most probably you are working with people who are spread all across the globe, so you must be curious to know who your colleagues are. So over to you, Waldik.
Yeah, absolutely. So the cool thing is that we work on Microsoft 365. So all this info about whom we work with, what meetings do we have, who works on what, like all of that is available to us already. It's stored in Microsoft 365 after all. So the cool thing is that we can build apps that tap into all these data and insights and allow us to stay in touch with people around us in our work and their work, right?
Yes.
And the way to do it is through the Microsoft Graph. So the Microsoft Graph is the API for Microsoft 365. It gives us access to data, insights, and it allows us to read things from Microsoft 365, but it also allows us to create things, create meetings, start calls, create files. So it's a really powerful API for anything that you would like to automate on 365. Well, as you can imagine, the data that we store in 365 is for our work, right?
Yes.
So it's not available anonymously, is it?
No, it's not, and it shouldn't.
Exactly, right? Because you don't want everybody to be able to see your files or see your email, right? So in order to access this info, you need to authenticate first.
Correct.
And the way we do it is we do it using MSAL. So MSAL is the Microsoft Authentication Libraries. And in our case, we build JavaScript app. So we will use MSAL.js to help us authenticate to Microsoft 365. Right, so here, as you see in a code, we have a piece of script or piece of code, JavaScript code, that allows us to authenticate. And that does a few things. Like one is we need to sign in with our work account to our app so that our app knows who we are in our workplace. So we're not creating a new account. We use the same account that we use to access our email, our files, communicate with others on Teams, to authenticate to our app. And that is really cool because we don't need to create a new account. We don't need to have database or table or some other file with passwords. No, we're not doing any of that. We use the same account that we use for work, and we use it to authenticate to our app. Another step is, like, just because we authenticate to our app doesn't have access by default to all our info that we store in Microsoft 365. Our app needs to request access to specific areas, like info about files or meetings or emails, right? So these are the scopes that you see here on the screen. And in our app, we will show info about emails, about meetings, about files and colleagues, which is why we need these scopes, right? The last thing left is to get a token. Microsoft Graph works based on OAuth, right? So it requires bearer token to communicate, or to for our app to communicate with Graph, right? And AMSL does that job for us. So we don't need to worry about issuing requests, getting responses, handling errors. AMSL solve all of that for us. The only thing we need to do is show pop-up to authenticate so that users can enter their work account, and then based on that, it will help us get the right token. So far, so good.
Yes, it is. And in fact, it has simplified the authentication process for the developer as well.
Absolutely, right? Because like otherwise, you would be seeing a bunch of code calling, like issuing web requests, calling Azure AD, getting responses back, parsing that, trying to extract the right. That is so tedious, and it's not even a part of your app. It's prerequisite for your app. So why not instead just enable auth for your app and focus on building the app and not plumbing?
Yes, another aspect that we take care of here is also the security, which is pretty important. You just don't want to, like you said, authenticate. You want to do it securely, and this is the right place to be, because the library itself takes care of that for you.
Absolutely. Okay, so this part covers for us the auth at that stage, and we will see all of that in action soon. So, but now with this code, we can authenticate. We have a token. Well, the last thing left for us to do is to call to Graph and get colleagues, right? So how does that work? Graph is a REST-based API, meaning it's just a URL you call, you put a token, you build the URL, which is the query you want to call, and you get back a response with data or an error. You could be doing that by yourself, but again, why? Why trying to spend cycles on combining the right requests, building the right queries, putting the filters the right way? Right? Like that is so much additional work that instead there's an easier way, right? So in our case, we use the Microsoft Graph SDK that abstracts all of that away for us and allows us to really easily create the right URLs. And also it has a number of additional features like support for handling errors, throttling, and whatnot. So all of that is already implemented in SDK. The only thing we need to do in our app is to tell which data to get, and we're done. So here on the screen, you see how we instrument, or how we create an instance of client for the Microsoft Graph, combining that with our auth, right? Because like Graph isn't anonymous. It needs to have token, right? So here in this part, we basically tie Microsoft Graph SDK into AMSL auth that we created previously. So I guess the last thing left, how do we get colleagues from Graph?
Yeah, let's go.
You want to see it?
Yes.
Cool. All right. So here is the first goal, right? So to get our colleagues from Graph, we need to do 2 or 3 things. Like first thing is like we need to get info about ourselves, which is available on me. And then we need to go a hierarchy up in the org chart, meaning we need to get our manager. But we don't want to have info about the manager. We only need the ID of their user, so that from there we can go a level down and get their reports, meaning our peers.
Yes.
So we go a level up, get the ID, and then we get reports. And here you can see like how we use the Graph SDK to build this call. Like you're not seeing anywhere a URL. We're calling the Me Manager endpoint in Microsoft Graph, and from there we select only the ID. And that allows us to optimize our call because we don't want to get all info about the manager, not their department, job title, email, telephone number, about them, and so forth and so on. We just need the ID, so that allows us to cut the amount of data that goes over the line, right?
Yes.
Then from them we go through the graph, and that is actually why graph is called graph. Like imagine these nodes that we go through. Like we went from me to manager, now we're going from manager to their reports, meaning our colleagues, right? So we basically go across the graph, traversing the different nodes that are available to us. And for colleagues or for the reports, who are our peers, we want to have some more info, right? So we want to see their name, their job title, department, city, state, and country. So we want to show some more info about them. The last thing left is, if we just did this, what do we get?
We get our colleagues' information, whatever we are selecting here.
Including ourselves, because we are
Yes.
also a direct report of our manager, right? So, and we don't,
That's right.
like, I don't know about you, but I am not my own colleague.
I'm not my colleague,
Right?
yes.
Yeah, exactly, exactly, right? So we need to exclude that from that list, and that is exactly what we do here. So we get current account of that person that is authenticated in the app, and we remove them from the list of all reports that we got previously.
Correct.
And that is basically it. So how about we see it now in action?
Yes, let's do this.
Here we are in our app. As we said, we're not authenticating with our own account. We sign to the app in with the Microsoft 365 account that we use at our workplace. So we click sign in with Microsoft, and because I signed in previously already, it went directly through, and here you can see the list of our colleagues. Is that what you wanted to see?
Yeah, well, I know their names now, but I'm not sure if that I can understand who they are. Like, I would rather put a face on each of these names to get to know them, because I'm pretty sure there were other information as well around these colleagues, and I would love to know. I would love to know how they look.
Exactly, right? And it's like every single time, like you are new somewhere, whether that's in a team or a project, like you might, like that team might know each other already, and to them you are one new name, but to you these are 10 new names. Like, so who are these folks? Like, how can you tie the name to a face, right? So the cool thing is we have their pictures stored as well. Like here you can see on the screen, we can see our own picture.
Yeah.
So we could as well show theirs. So let's try and get their photos from the Microsoft Graph as well and show it here. So let's
this
go
is
back
a
to our...
separate.
Sorry?
So this is a separate call, is it? Is it a separate graph call to get the photographs?
Yes, it is. It is, because that is like, right now we will traverse another node in the graph, which is picture and photo and actually the binary of the image, right? Because like otherwise you would get everything at once, and it would end up with you having all the info that you don't actually need.
Exactly.
Right? So instead, Graph is more optimized, allowing you to choose exactly what you need. But then it also means that at times you need to do this additional call to get that additional info.
Yes, you keep on extending what you want.
Exactly. So let's quickly jump to another branch so that you won't see us type, or me type and code, because I just cannot type. I'm like typing with two fingers, like trying to find the right keys. Like, that would take hours, right?
Yes. And we've got only a few minutes.
Yes. How would you know? Cool. Right. So in here, well, what we do next is we get photos, right? So what we do is for colleagues, for all of them, we get their picture. And the way we want to do it is that even if requesting one picture would fail, because maybe a person doesn't have picture, maybe there was error, you know, like anything, we still want to show the info that we get. That is why exactly we use all settled and not just all, right? And then in our response, we check, hey, did we get image? And if we did, we create a local URL for the binary of the image that we got and associate it with a colleague so that it can be shown on the page. The way you get the picture, we have for that another call, is just another call to grab, right? So we say user, we pass the ID of that person /photo, and that is actually the binary. If we skip this part, We will get dimensions of an image, like how big it is, what format, but we will
basically
not get
the
the picture
metadata.
itself. Exactly, exactly. Well, and the last thing left is we want to show it. Like we need a way to show it on a page. And for that, we use something called Microsoft Graph Toolkit. To keep it short, it's a set of web components that you can use in any JavaScript app that allows you to really easily show data from Microsoft 365 in a very nice way that aligns with Microsoft 365 products. So in here, what we do is we use component named MGT person, which is, as its name said, meant for showing info about a person. To there, we associate the person info, so things like their preferred name, job title, department, and photo. And we choose to show the info in 3 lines. Curious how it looks like?
Yes, very much.
All right, let's see it in action. Let's see if that helps you a little bit more.
Come on.
There you go.
Oh,
So now
yes.
you can see their name,
Yeah,
job title, and a picture. Does that help?
that helps. I mean, yes, now I know Alex is a marketing assistant and I can see his face, so I can probably relate when he's chatting to me, or if he's coming on a meeting, I could know this is Alex. This is great.
Cool. Is there anything else that this app could do to help you know more about your colleagues, your work, anything around them?
Well, yeah, I'm still thinking about that first week experience for a new employee in a company, and I now know the colleagues. I can see their faces. One thing that's always again that I'm interested in is to know how my week looks like. What are the catch-ups I have? What are the stand-up meetings? I don't know what's happening that week. So that's something we should probably put in this app.
Cool. Yeah. So the cool thing is, again, that at least, so I don't know about you, where do you keep track of all your meetings? Do you do it in Notepad, Post-its on a screen?
In my calendars.
Right. I mean, being a dev, I might have like, maybe you have a CLI for it, or I don't know, maybe you use some other tool. Like, no, you just put meetings in calendar like everybody else.
Exactly.
Perfect. Cool. So that simplifies things for us a lot, because we can, again, use the Microsoft Graph to get that info out of Microsoft 365, your calendar, and show it in the app. So
Nice.
Let's go back to our app. Let's quickly switch to our branch. Cool. And now we have another piece in it in which we load events. Again, to load events, like there's one tricky part about events. Sometimes there are meetings that are just occurring on a single day, right? They occur once and they're gone.
Yes.
Sometimes, however, there are meetings that recur every week, like check-in with your manager or your team, daily stand-ups, right? So these are recurring meetings.
Yes.
And the interesting thing about them is that they're created probably in the past, maybe 2 weeks back, 3 weeks back, 2 months back. So if you would just look at what meetings are created for this week, you would miss them because they've been created in the past. They might have occurrence in this or coming week, but they've been created in the past. And in Microsoft Graph, there are 2 ways to get meetings. You can get me meetings, which are meetings that are created, and you will get a list of all created meetings. But you can also get a calendar view, which is basically a snapshot of your calendar for a period of time. And this is exactly what I think you want here, right? You don't care about which meetings are created for this week, but what meetings are you have, whether they're recurring or not, right?
Absolutely, because I don't think project stand-up meeting, it would happen every week, or there is a sprint meeting. It would happen every fortnight, right? So we probably have more recurring meetings than we actually know.
Exactly. So for that, we can use another endpoint available on Microsoft Graph, which is called Calendar View. And we access it through me, my calendar, me calendar, calendar view. And for that, we need to set the date range for which we want to get a calendar view, basically the window of time. So we pass the current date as an ISO string, and then we add to it another 7 days because we want to get meetings for an upcoming week, right? So we pass them through the start date time, end date time, and we order by the events that we get back, ascending by start time. So the events that are on Monday are first, Tuesday afterwards, Wednesday, and so forth and so on.
That makes total sense.
Yeah, and then probably for these meetings, you also would like to see with whom they are, right? Because otherwise, like, you would just have a meeting and then like, yeah, but who are in there, right? I assume.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be interested to know. I just don't want to see the title. I probably don't even understand what that means
Exactly.
at this point, because I'm new.
Yeah. We'll have check-in with Bob.
Yes.
About what? Who is Bob anyway?
Who's Bob?
Exactly, right? So the cool thing is that when we get meetings from calendar, we also get info about attendees. And for each attendee, we will get their email address. And for them, we can also get their picture. So again, just to make it really clear, who is who. And again, this proves the point, like how we go through the nodes in Graph. Like we go from me, my events, my calendar, to attendees, to their emails, to their pictures. Like, so we again traverse the graph to get different info from different places, right?
Right.
And for us, this is just a single call, because here we get the events and attendees, and then we do another call to get pictures. And again, the same way we've done it. First, if we got image, if it came through, we create a local URL that we can then show in our app. And the cool thing is, because we use MGT, because we use Microsoft Graph Toolkit, we can really easily show them on a page. So do we do it here too? Right. So here in UI, we have I think actually we don't use MGT here, do we?
We do.
That was a little trick. Yes, exactly. Yes, no, actually we do. I was a little bit unsure if we can use MGT for that too or not, but we actually can, and that is really cool thing, because we get all these events, and probably we want to get them grouped by day, right? So all events on Monday are just a single group, all events on Tuesday are a single group, and these are the like small things that typically take a lot of time to build, and we get them for free from MGT, from Microsoft Graph Toolkit. So here we have a component named agenda that is made for showing events, right? And in there we have a template that we adjusted a little so that we can show data that is relevant to us. So all of that is here. In our code, the only thing that we need to do is to get meetings and then get them assigned to MGT agenda, which we do here. That is all.
Right, so MGT agenda basically is just a presentation layer, and you're just passing the data that it needs.
So in this particular way, this is how we chose to use MGT in this particular case, so that we can show you how you can use the Microsoft Graph SDK to call Graph by yourself. If you use MGT, you can also choose to have MGT load data for you. Now, if you do that, it's so simple that you actually will not see any calls, right? You would just see a little string, like you will see basically the endpoint you want to call, and everything else is abstracted away. We wanted to give you a little more insight into how you call Graph to show you that. So we said, you know what? We'll use MGT to show the data, but we will load it ourselves so that we can show you how it works. So that is just, in this particular case, our choice. But you can definitely use MGT to have it load the data for you.
Yeah, because sometimes you may even want to load different data that's not yet available in MGT. So this is one way to actually know how to do it through the Graph SDK, so you can control the data that you want.
Yeah, and also another thing is, I just thought, like, imagine that you have an LOB app with customers or projects, right? So you have data that you don't have stored in Graph, but you still want to show them in the same way.
Exactly.
You can totally do that. You could load data from your LOB and attach them to MGT to have them shown in the same consistent way as if it was just available in 365. So users don't know better, right? For them, it's just like, yes, this data makes sense. It is shown the same way across the whole app, whether it's LOB or not.
And the branding, I feel it's very close to what the first party products offer. So that's another plus, I would say, because who wants to fiddle with CSS?
I don't know. Like, I'm a dev. I cannot do CSS. Everything that I build comes out as stick figures. So it's like MGT for me is a huge sanity savior, because I don't need to fiddle with aligning divs and making round corners and making pictures. I can just focus on building my app and not deal with CSS. Anyways, shall we see it in action? Shall we
Yes,
see
please.
how we can show events? So let me
Yes.
refresh the page. Our app.
Woo.
We sign in immediately. 3 to
Oh.
1, drum roll. And now we see our upcoming
Awesome.
events group per day. So that is something that we get for free from MGT. And for each event, we have title, duration, the location event, all attendees, and pictures. So we can exactly
Nice.
know who they are. And we can even, we even have direct link to more info about meetings, so we can join, or we can even join it directly on Teams, directly from here. Does that help?
Nice. That totally helps. Now I don't have to go back to different applications. I have just everything I need right here in a page, in an application.
Absolutely.
So that was great. We saw our colleagues. We put a face on our colleagues' names. We saw events that are happening in my calendar view for a week. So next up, we're going to see more around what's happening around
Welcome
me.
back, everyone. And if you're just joining us, we are doing all kinds of things today with Microsoft Graph. We are learning together, building apps with Microsoft Graph. I'm Christina Warren. We just saw some fantastic content. We're going to see some more in just a second. But if you're watching, you're enjoying things, you're getting the most out of Microsoft Graph, be sure to let us know on the Twitters. Use the hashtag #LearnTogether to share your experiences, what you think of Microsoft Graph. If you have any links to anything you've built on GitHub, or if you also have any tips, let us know that too. But I hope you're having a great time. I'm learning so much. This role, I'm going to be honest, is fairly new to me, but it's really exciting and it's really powerful seeing all the different stuff that you can build with Microsoft Graph. And on that note, we're actually now going to go back into our next session, which is going to pick off with where we left off. And this is going to be staying on top of your team's work with Microsoft Graph. And this is part 2. So check it out.
Cool. So we have just seen how we can use the Microsoft Graph and Microsoft 365 to build a simple app that helps us to stay in touch with everything that's going on around us. And we have shown a list of our colleagues, their pictures, their job titles. We also have shown our events in calendar. But there are also so many more insights that are available in Microsoft 365 and that we can also show through the Microsoft Graph. So first things first, Bob, we show a lot of stuff on the screen. Is there maybe a way for us to filter it? Because imagine that it's a lot of meetings, but I want to reach out to, let's say, Adele. Shall I do it directly, or maybe I have an upcoming meeting with her anyway that I could use then, right? So is there an easy way for me, for us to be able to only show info about a person?
Yeah, that's a great idea. So I think we need to add a little simple navigation to the app to make that happen. So let's go in and add a little bit of code. So here we're adding just a couple of little navigation methods to select a user when they click, when somebody clicks it, and then to get back that user ID when we render. So the result then is, it's almost the same, right? Except for when we click on something, it actually goes in and filters the calendar, as well as as we add more things to the screen, we can filter those as well. Notice that it's putting the user ID up here, right? Which is just a little single page app. We're trying to keep it simple here. We're not using any fancy frameworks or anything like that. So I guess what's interesting really is, especially here, is filtering the events so that we're only going to see things where Adele, in this case, is in the meeting with Megan, who is the user I'm logged in as. So if you come in here and look at the events code, you'll see that this is the calendar view that you talked about earlier with Rabia. And now here we're just saying if a user is selected, then we're going to go ahead and filter down those meetings. And I mean, if the graph could filter on meeting attendees, it can filter on a lot, but not 100%, right? So if it could filter on meeting attendees, it would be better to do that on the server side or up in the cloud. But in this case, it can't. So I'm just going to do the filter here in JavaScript. And I think for the case of meetings, that's probably fine because there's not a huge number of them.
Yeah, and also I guess another thing is, right, that if we show all meetings initially, we have them already. So imagine that at some point we would add cache to our app, then we have the data, everything that we need to show already locally, and then we can just filter that collection, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think we can probably optimize this app by caching some of the data. Again, it's probably not, we don't want to confuse the audience with it right now because it's not graph specifically, but you know, it's still something that we could add at some point. And so that's a really good point.
All right, so now I can more easily see events that I have around a person, and we can still see our colleagues. So one thing that would be also nice to have in the same place, I would find really cool to have my unread emails in here, so that I can more easily see like what is on my plate, and is there something that I need to act on again around these folks, or just in like coming days. Is there a way for us to also show my unread emails in here?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's just another piece of the graph. And I'm going to go back to Graph Explorer here because I really think that this is where I always start, is to see kind of what calls can I do and kind of map my path between the nodes, like you were saying, right? So it looks like my mail is right here. So that's it. It's really easy to get the mail.
Right.
I think that the tricky thing is, first of all, I'm going to want to filter this. I probably only want to see unread mail.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
Like if I've already read it, why do I need this app to see it again? Right?
Exactly.
So
yeah.
So it turns out that the Microsoft Graph uses a standard called OData, which is it's a way of handling tables of data or collections of data, create, read, update, and delete. So it's really great that they kind of stuck with a standard instead of inventing that different for everything, right? So the OData spec says that the way to filter is to put $filter on the end. And here, if I was to look into the data, I would see is red right here is true. So I only want to see where is red is false.
Right.
So now I can run this, and you'll see that it's actually going to filter out and only show me the ones where is red is false.
Nice.
Now,
nice.
So now let's go back over to the app, and I'm going to flip it again. We're using these branches because we really don't want to
type.
Have people typing. Yeah, it's always, nobody likes to watch me type. So there's the emails, right? It's coming in. The next thing I think that we probably want to do, right, though, is what do you want to have happen if I click on Adele, for instance?
Yeah, exactly. Like just show emails from her,
Adele.
right? So that I can,
Right.
like, if I have for example a meeting upcoming, I can also see like, hey, maybe she reached out to me about something. Maybe there's something that we need to still think about. So it will be good to have the same filter in place for emails.
Yeah, I agree. And so you can see it's working here in the code. But before I show the code, let me just show the rest of the filter. So if we kind of go down here in the data, you'll see that I've got a from and I've got a sender, right? So here's sender, email address, address. So you can actually navigate down into that structure in your filter. So let me add to the filter here. So I'm going to put and, first of all,
right,
and sender / email address / address equals Adele. And now I will get back only the emails from Adele, right? So that's how this code is working. And I really like the way the code is kind of laid out, because what it's doing is it's saying, okay, me / messages, right? Next thing it's doing, it's a little bit fancier. It's doing select. This would turn into $select in OData. But this is just a nicer format for JavaScript, right? It's only going to get the data that we need to show. And then we're only going to get the top 5. So you can page through data in almost every graph call by doing .top or $top in the REST call, and $skip to skip down to the next page. So we only want really the first 5, because if it's anything like my inbox, it's going to fill like the entire screen.
Yeah.
So
yeah, exactly.
And then it's going to say, well, is red is false, and then if if I'm filtering because I've selected some user ID, then what I'm going to do is add this AND clause here to the filter. And again, then we get this nice result that now it filters based on, you know, whoever. I didn't get any emails from Christine. I get this one from Isaiah. I get these ones from Adele, etc. And
Cool.
one thing that's kind of nice about this filtering, well, some of these people don't send me a lot of email. One thing that's kind of nice about this filtering is with the dot top, if we did the filtering in our JavaScript, we would only see the top 5 minus ones that were from other senders. We might not see any emails at all unless one of these mails happened to fall in the top 5. By having Graph do the filtering, we're actually taking the top 5 after the filter was applied.
Yeah, and that was also a cool thing in your code where you split the call to Graph basically in two around filter. And the one thing that I see there is that if we have selected user ID, we need to get their emails to match sender, right? So we only load user's email if there is one, so we don't do it always, right? So there is no, so we basically optimize this, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. You can, just as you can chain the functions, like .top could call .filter, .get, you can also just store in a variable your query and then keep building it up and building it up in your code. And then as long at the end you put the get or the post or whatever the HTTP verb is, you know, you can structure your code however you want. So I really like that too.
Cool. All right, so now we have my calendar, my events, my emails. Now, I don't know about you, but one thing that I struggle with all the time is my files, like getting back to my files or trying to find like, hey, in our team, what are the files that we work currently on so that we can really easily get back to them? Is there something in Graph that could allow us to simplify that perhaps?
There is, and it's actually, let me show the code first actually. There is, and it's called Insights. So this is one of the cool things about the Graph. You've got this layer in the middle of the architecture where all the calls are coming through, right? This has a number of architectural advantages. I mean, a good one is just that our code much faster. That layer is in the middle, but trending is like what's relevant to me. So it's going to take, so if I just edited a file once, rank that 100 times more because it knows the overall traffic. So it's going to actually come in here and filter them down to only the drive I might find, like I might find a trending the files. And then, so what I really want to do is get all of the information about that file, and that's going to require another call. The nice thing is that the Insights API provides me with that exact call. So all I have to do is look at resource reference.id, and I actually get the drive, the path all the way to the file, wherever it is. And I can just do a GET request with that. Now what you'll notice is because I started with one call trending, now I'm getting 5 responses back. I really didn't want to go and one at a time ask, give me the data about the first file, give me the data about the second file, give me the data about the third file, right? It would be much better to do one call to Graph and get it all back. So this shows off another cool feature in Graph. It's also part of the SDK. So we're going to actually batch these and put these all into one HTTP request. And so what this is doing here is building up an array of batch requests and then sending the whole thing off in a post. So here's an example of a post instead of a GET, right? And then what comes back, there's going to be a matching response. So instead of getting back one HTTP response, well, I am going to get one HTTP response, but instead of getting one of my operations back, I'm going to get an array, again, that I can just go and correlate my requests to the responses. And so the result is...
Exactly. Let's see it in action.
Yeah, there we go. So now I can see all of my files, right? One of the nice things, by the way, about storing the files in Microsoft 365, right? If I click on this file, it opens. Now, you know, that may not seem like a big deal, but it's actually a pretty big deal because I've got Microsoft, you know, Excel and Word and PowerPoint and all those programs that people use frequently are built right into the system. So I don't have to go and implement that or try to make a bridge between my app and these online tools. The user already is using them. They're already there. Just use them. So one other thing I wanted to quickly point out is what happens if I filter the trending, if I actually click on, say, Adele, I'm actually going to see the files that are trending for Adele. So this really gives me an insight into what she's working on, because I might have certain meetings with her. It might be some tiny little part of her job. Here, I'm going to see all of the files that she's working on. I can see here that she's working on a buyer brochure, or at least interested in this buyer brochure or this product roadmap. Now, it might seem a little bit scary to do that, but the graph is enforcing security. So if her most trending file was, you know, a confidential document or something, I don't have access, it will automatically be removed from the list. So, and again, there's no change in the code. All it's doing is just taking, instead of starting with /me/insights trending, it's taking /users, the user ID /insights trending. And now I can get back the trending documents for all these different users and see kind of what they're working on.
All right. So we have seen, like, going all the way from person filtering events so that we can more easily see what events we have with others in our team. We have seen how we can show my unread emails. We have seen trending files. I guess, so it is a lot already, right? So for now, we'll wrap it up. But in the next segment, we will finalize the app, add a few more things, and also show you some other application scenarios to use the Microsoft Graph. See ya.
Together with Microsoft Graph, all about building apps with Microsoft Graph. And you just got finished watching a session about how to stay on top of your team's work with Microsoft Graph. Really, really good stuff. Great for all the productivity nerds out there. Now, don't worry if you missed this session. We will have the resources available on demand at aka.ms/learn-graph. aka.ms/learn-together-graph. Sorry about that. aka.ms/learn-together-graph. Really, really great stuff. And now we are actually going to go to our next session, which is all about building a bot with Microsoft Graph. So stay tuned.
All right, we're back. Thanks very much. So in our last segment, we actually saw how to add some navigation to the app so that we could focus on specific colleagues that we're working with. We also learned how to pull, how to filter the events that we're showing, how to pull emails in and how to filter those. And then we saw how to use the File Insights API to get insights into what people are working on. So Rabia, you said something earlier in the section where you were talking with Waldeck. You made a really good point that we are geographically distributed. I mean, we're all over the world in our team. And I think this is happening more and more these days. I'm wondering if there's some way we could show the locations of the users inside of our app, and also really show time zones, because time zones are really the tricky part, right? Like even right now, the three of us are on 3 different continents and it's quite late where you are.
That's right. So we all know that because we are in our team, we are all globally distributed, and we probably know our teammates' sleeping patterns more than probably our parents or family. So I guess that's an important functionality that we should add in the app to know more about our team. So let's jump in to our Get My Colleagues function, which we saw earlier in our session with Waldeck. And we basically pulled out all the colleagues' information. We saw their display names, job title, department, and what you also noticed is we are picking up city, state, and country of our colleagues as well.
Wow! So that's in the graph too. So I can get all that information. I don't have to pop up and say, "Hey, where are you?" or anything.
Nope. It's all
in?
there,
Wow.
and the developer does not even have to know where this information is coming from, which service from M365 is providing. All they need to know is how to work with Graph. So this information is great. As you can tell, with this information, I can go ahead and call Bing API or any other API that will give me a time zone. For here, we have a function called get time zone information, and all what we are doing here is passing the location information of the users. So if you're gonna peek into this function, you can see here exactly what we're doing. We are using the Bing REST API and passing all that information as a query. And we're also passing the Bing Maps API key, which is a configuration that you want to add into your env file, which is right here. So I'll open up the sample. This is how your configuration would look like, and this is where your API key is. So that's all what we have done, and we get the time zone. And this, I think it's pretty brilliant idea, and it should be there in every application possible. If you can see the time zone with your users, great. I don't have to second guess when you're gonna wake up, when you're gonna be replying to my pings. This is it. So you're absolutely right. So let's go ahead and find out in our browser.
Okay.
Awesome. So that's how it looks. You have your colleague information. At the same time, you have their time information, you have their time zone and where they are from. So I think this is an icebreaker in itself. Yes. So I know these people are in this location, in this time zone, when I'm booking a meeting next.
That's really cool. The only thing that could possibly be cooler would be if we could see all of these people as points on a map.
Well, you guessed it right. It's because we have it.
There it is. So amazing. Okay, there we are. Wow, this is
because
great.
Anyway, we're using the Bing API. We might as well just indulge with more map functionality, but all thanks to Graph for giving me the location information. So we've got all the pins here. This exactly look like how I call our colleagues are distributed. We've got Australia, we've got Europe, we've got America. And the good thing is you could even see where they are based on each user. As you saw earlier, you could select and see information per colleague. You could also see where they are in the map.
Oh, nice. It looks like you're also pulling in some other information about the user. That's really nice.
Yeah, so this section that you see here is the about me of your colleague. So it's a good way to get to know what they work on, what their hobbies are, maybe the kind of projects they're passionate about. All this information is right here as well. Again, coming from Graph. So let's go back and see how that works in the code. So here in the information that we are pulling out for our colleagues, you might have noticed we don't have about me. Not every endpoint has all the information like we discussed before. They're all distributed in Graph. So we have something called the profile information that we're getting here. The profile information would give you the about me. So that is basically just about the user. There, again, some information are duplicated here, but not all. So what you saw in the Direct Reports API, we have much more information that you can show from a user. That is this about me information. That is being pulled out and being displayed under each of these colleagues, which you are seeing here.
Wow, that's really cool. This is starting to look really good. Like we could actually use this thing. So I think, this is really kind of cool how this whole thing has kind of built up right here in this single page app. So is that it? Like the Graph is good for single page apps, right? Is there other scenarios where it could be useful? What if I wanted to write, I think there are other SDKs, right? Like anything that could call a REST call could call the Graph, but what if I'm writing like an Android app or an iOS app or universal Windows app or even a bot? Like would the Graph work from those places as well?
Absolutely. And for that reason, let's go to a bot. So we had a hack week previously, a couple of weeks back, and we built a bot, which basically is very similar to this SPA application. It's around you as a person, but here you can see it's more about your colleagues as well. But what if you want to create like a personal assistant bot? So anytime I think about a bot functionality, it's mostly to assist a user to do something. So in our case, let's see a bot working who is going to get me the same information, but around me, around my events or my files. Again, the similar kind of an application, but as a bot. So what I'm going to do now is jump to a bot composer. So we've built a this personal assistant bot using the bot framework composer, and it connects to Graph and gets information from Graph. And I'll show you how it works in a minute, but let me explain to you a few things that you probably are curious on how to call Graph in a bot composer. So away from the JavaScript application, how would you do it in a different scene? So here we have something called a dialog. So in bot composers, you can have actions, you can get information, you can give response back to the user, etc. Here we are using a few things like auth. That's the most important bit. You need to connect to Graph.
Yeah, so just like we were, Waldek showed earlier, actually authenticating to the single page app in JavaScript. Is this the same thing in the bot?
That's the same thing. All you're doing is logging in, getting the token. So token is what you need to make another API request for Graph. And this action in the bot composer would do exactly that. All you need is a connection. And once you have a connection in Graph set up, we've already set this up in the bot composer, and we are just using the connection here. And once that is done, the user will get the same button that you saw in the JavaScript application. Then you go ahead and sign in. And once signed in, once this connection is successful, you get the token. And once you have the token, you just need to make the same call that you saw earlier in the files session. You saw the trending files, right? So it's using the insights workload. And with the same call and with the authorization token, we are going to make another call to Graph. So it's basically all around you knowing how to make Graph calls, and you can build any kind of application that can go ahead and talk to Graph and get the information from Microsoft 365. So let's see how this works in action. What I'm going to do now is start the bot. And I already have another tool as well for demo purposes. It's called a bot emulator, basically like a simulator for bots. So I don't have to host it anywhere. I can just open up and see how it works. So that's what I'm starting here. I'm going to start the bot and I'm going to show you the emulator where this works. Yeah, so we got the a bot running now. Let's go ahead and test it in the emulator. So I'm opening up the tool that I just talked to you about before. Click on that. Okay, so this is the emulator, and it's starting the conversation. Right, so it's connecting to the bot now, which is running in this local host. All right, so here it is, our personal assistant bot. It says, howdy, what can I do for you? So what I want to see is what's up, what's trending, what's happening. So I'm just going to click here, which basically goes off and kick off that authentication dialog that we saw earlier, which will go ahead and give me the sign-in button. So it's very similar to the SPA application that we saw earlier. I'm going to go ahead and sign in. And this would do all the auth and give the token back to the bot. And with that, bot will go ahead and process the graph call that we saw earlier for getting the files, the trending files. So you can see here the trace of all the network that's happening here, the calls being made to Graph, what's being retrieved. All this information is in the trace of the emulator. And that's probably the reason why we chose this to show you that they're the same calls that you saw earlier. For example, if I open this trace, you can see here the graph call for trending, and that's exactly what you're seeing here. Insights and trending, so it's the same graph call that we made earlier. So we have all the trending files shown by the bot. Now, if you go back to the application, you can see here that the trending files that you saw in the SPA application is the same list that's being given to you. It's the same call, but in a different setup, in a bot that we created using the bot composer. That's
really cool. I love it. And so I could be asking this bot from my phone or something. Maybe I didn't want to run the whole app and everything. A quick question about this. I noticed that the login button is in both the single page app and the bot. And it makes sense while we're testing here that you're logging in maybe with different users. If we actually built a production app, say it was running in Microsoft Teams, which is where people are collaborating a lot, would it be necessary to have that login button every time they use the app?
Yeah, for this bot, it would mean that if it's the same user who's signing in after they've already signed in successfully, it would be there for a time period, maybe 6 months. So if this bot is in the Teams application, if you are uploaded into Teams, then it would mean that it's the same. So it's for that period of time. You don't have to re-sign in if you're the same user who signed in successfully. Now, for tabs in Teams, there is SSO available at the moment just for tabs, which is pretty awesome. And it's in developer preview at the moment. But yeah, it's there. These options are there for you to make it easier for the users to not keep on logging into your application.
All right. Well, thanks, Rabia. This has been really, really interesting. I love how you combined another cloud service in with the Microsoft Graph, and presumably I think a lot of developers, of course, their app is going to do more things than just show information from the graph, but they can combine, just like you combined the Bing information with the graph information, they can combine their own apps in with the graph and just provide the information that users need to see rather than asking them to navigate to different places to pull together the information they need.
Yes, it is. My favorite part is the time zone. I'm still hung up on that.
Thanks, Rabia, and thanks everyone for joining. And I'll turn it back over to the main program already in progress.
And welcome back, everyone. This has been a fantastic couple of hours learning all about Microsoft Graph and how you can build apps and be a developer with Microsoft Graph. I'm Christina Warren. We've been here learning together, #LearnTogether. And now I'm going to bring back in our watch party. David and the P&P team, that is the Patterns and Practices team, is going to join me. Hello to David and everybody watching from home. Hello, how are you doing, David?
Hi, Christina. Thanks for having us back on. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun, a great event. Really amazing work.
Is there anything, I know you're like in this stuff like day in, day out. You work with a lot of companies, a lot of partners. Is there anything, what's the biggest takeaway you're going to grab from this event?
Boy, I tell you, that's kind of like asking which of my children are my favorite, right? Can I say all of them?
Yeah.
Everything was amazing. Although I will say I love some of the way that things were described. Louisa Fries described the MGT or Microsoft Graph Toolkit components as big Legos for adults, right?
Yes.
We all just loved playing with toys, and those are just big adult toys for us to play with. And so all of this stuff is amazing. I love the challenge that you're going to be doing, that everyone's going to be doing, because it's getting everyone more involved in a way that's not just based on documentation, but let's work together and let's build some things together.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. The challenge is great. aka.ms/learn to get graph dash challenge, and Louisa is absolutely right. It's like Legos for adults, and you know what? I play with Legos, but this is even more fun. So. Well, maybe not more fun, but just as fun. So
just as fun.
Yeah, great stuff. All right, so David, where can people go to learn more about the Patterns and Practices group?
Yeah, they can go to aka.ms/m365pnp. That'll give you access to all the information about the Patterns and Practices initiatives, community calls, all of the resources and tools. We have hands-on guidance sessions. Really want to get more involved with everybody in the community in a way that's fun and collaborative, and we would love to interact with everybody.
I love that. I love that. So that's aka.ms/m365pnp.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. And if you want to learn more about everything we talked about today, if you want to watch some of the sessions over again, if you missed them, if you want to get our resources, we have all of those available at aka.ms/learntogether-graph. That's aka.ms/learntogether-graph. We'll have all the videos up, the resources in Microsoft Learn and other documentation so you can get started. And the real thing we want you to take away from this is that anybody can do this. Any developer can come in and can use Graph and can do great things with it. So David and everybody watching from home, thank you so much for joining me. Everybody who's watching on the internet, thank you for joining us. And we will see you at the next one of these things. Take care.